Saint Frideswide, the revered patroness of Oxford, was an Anglo Saxon noblewoman who lived during the early 18th century. Born around AD 650 into a prominent Mercian family, daughter of King Didan of Oxford and niece of King Wulfhere of Mercia, she devoted her life to religious service from a young age. Rejecting several proposed marriages, Frideswide instead founded a monastic community on the outskirts of what would become Oxford, providing a place of prayer, learning, and refuge for women seeking a devout life. Her convent, built beside a fresh spring that miraculously sprang forth at her prayers, quickly became a center of pilgrimage. Local lore holds that she worked numerous miracles, including healing the sick and protecting her community from various threats. One famous legend recounts her evasion of a pagan suitor, King Algar, whom she escaped with divine aid, causing him to be struck blind until he repented. After her death, believed to have occurred around AD 727, Frideswide's shrine at the Priory attracted pilgrims throughout the Middle Ages. Her relics were venerated for their healing powers, and her feast day, October 19th, became widely celebrated. Although the dissolution of the monasteries in the 16th century dispersed much of her community, her legacy endures in the University of Oxford's Christ Church Cathedral, which stands on the site of her original foundation. Today, Saint Frideswide remains a symbol of faith, scholarship, and resilience, her life continuing to inspire both religious devotees and the academic community she once nurtured.
Around the year 700 AD, Frideswide established a small community of women on the outskirts of what was then a modest river settlement at the confluence of the Thames and Cherwell. She founded her priory beside a spring whose waters, according to tradition, were revealed miraculously through her prayers. This spring would later become associated with healing and sanctuary. Under her guidance, the nascent community observed the rule of St. Benedict, emphasizing prayer, hospitality, and the care of the sick and needy. Frideswide's reputation for compassion and wisdom spread quickly, drawing both local worshippers and pilgrims from further afield. Legends that surround her life illustrate both her sanctity and her courage. One popular story tells of a pagan suitor, often identified as King Algar of Leicester, who sought to force Frideswide into marriage. When he attacked her priory, she fled into the surrounding marshes. Aided by divine intervention, the waters of the Thames are said to have parted at her command, allowing her escape. In some versions of the tale, Algar was struck blind until he repented, underscoring the idea that Frideswide's faith endowed her with miraculous authority over both man and nature. Frideswide died around 727 AD, and almost immediately her tomb became a center of veneration. Miracles of healing were attributed to her intercession, and her shrine at St. Frideswide's Priory attracted pilgrims throughout the medieval period. Her feast day, October 19, was celebrated with great solemnity, drawing crowds who sought both spiritual comfort and physical cures from the waters of her holy spring. The priory she founded eventually evolved, becoming an Augustinian house and later, under the auspices of Cardinal Wolsey and then King Henry VIII, the core of what is now Christ Church, one of the University of Oxford's most distinguished colleges. The medieval Priory Church was rebuilt as a cathedral in 1546, and today Christ Church Cathedral stands on the very site of Frideswide's original foundation. Her legacy survives in the name of the college chapel, the school's symbols, and the continued reverence paid to her memory by scholars and faithful alike. After her death, believed to have occurred around AD 727, Frideswide's shrine at the Priory attracted pilgrims throughout the Middle Ages. Her relics were venerated for their healing powers, and her feast day, October 19th, became widely celebrated. Although the dissolution of the monasteries in the 16th century dispersed much of her community, her legacy endures in the University of Oxford's Christ Church Cathedral, which stands on the site of her original foundation. Today, St. Frideswide remains a symbol of faith, scholarship, and resilience, her life continuing to inspire both religious devotees and the academic community she once nurtured.
Yeah, so this church was built in 1872. If you walk up the street that way, you see the lines of houses that they were building a new community. So they wanted a new church to serve that new community of housing that had been built on old farmland. And so they built this church then, and they dedicated it to St Frideswide, because St Frideswide was the woman who brought Christianity to Oxford first, and arguably founded the city when she founded her first monastic house. If we look at the windows here, the central stained glass windows are original to the building, and the others and the altar and the reredos were added around 1910 when they completely redid this. The church is supposed to be one of the best examples of the architect's work, and today it's a church which serves the community in West Oxford.
Nestled in the tranquil village of Binsey, just under 2 miles northwest of Oxford city centre, the Holy Well of Saint Frideswide stands as a silent witness to centuries of devotion, legend, and gentle geography. Tucked beneath the yew trees on the western edge of Binsey's churchyard, the well emerges through a simple stone enclosure, its spring-fed waters pooling in an octagonal basin before flowing away through a stone trough. Though modest in scale, this unassuming structure carries manifold layers of history, faith, and local lore that continue to draw both pilgrims and passers-by alike. The well's origins reach back to the early 8th century, when Saint Frideswide, Anglo Saxon princess turned abbess, had founded her nunnery nearby. According to tradition, during a moment of need, she prayed for water, and a fresh spring burst forth at her feet, providing for her community's needs and marking the site as sacred. Over time, the spring became not only a practical source of clean water but also a focal point for those seeking physical healing or spiritual solace. Medieval pilgrims bound for Frideswide's shrine in Oxford would pause at Binsey, dipping cloths in the cool water to anoint themselves or their sick, believing in its curative powers. The present medieval stone casing dates largely from the 15th century, when the well was first formally enclosed and given its characteristic octagonal basin. The pointed arch of its modest stone shelter, weathered by time and the elements, frames the spring mouth like a small chapel, reminding visitors of its sacred pedigree. Inscriptions once carved into the surrounding stone, now faint, invited the faithful to give thanks or offer prayers. A simple wooden lid, replaced periodically over the centuries, protects the spring from debris, ensuring that the water remains clear and pure. Throughout the Reformation and the dissolution of the monasteries in the 16th century, the well's fate mirrored that of many religious sites, briefly neglected, yet never entirely abandoned by local tradition. While the nunnery at Oxford was suppressed and the cult of Saint Frideswide curtailed, the people of Binsey continued to regard the spring with reverence. Generations of villagers have taken water from the well for newborn baptisms, wedding blessings, or to water their garden flowers, practices that subtly echo older rites of purification and blessing. In the 19th century, with rising Victorian interest in medieval heritage, the well was restored and rededicated. Local antiquarians documented its legendary foundation, and artists such as William Holman Hunt immortalized Binsey's thatched cottages and the well's serene setting in paintings, further embedding it in the cultural memory of Oxfordshire. Today, the well is maintained by a small volunteer trust, which periodically clears the basin, replaces the wooden lid, and records water quality to safeguard both its heritage and its health benefits. Visiting the Holy Well of Saint Frideswide is a quiet, contemplative experience. One may pause by the stone trough to watch the water's gentle flow, trace one's fingers over the worn masonry, or fill a flask to carry home. In the soft rustle of yew needles overhead and the distant church bells of St. Margaret's, it is possible to imagine the countless pilgrims, medieval and modern, who have knelt, drank, or dipped cloth in these waters, seeking comfort, healing, or a moment of grace. Although the well no longer commands the bustling pilgrimage traffic of medieval times, its enduring presence reminds us that even the simplest natural spring can be sanctified by story and devotion. In Binsey, where the pastoral meets the sacred, St. Frideswide's Holy Well continues to offer a gentle invitation. to pause, reflect, and draw deeply from a source of history, faith, and abiding local love.
Architectural developments under the Augustinians further cemented her legacy. The Priory church was rebuilt in the Romanesque style, its thick walls and rounded arches evoking the solidity of faith she embodied. Within, the north transept housed a specially constructed chapel for her relics, its altar festooned with gold and silver. Illuminated manuscripts produced by the Priory's scriptorium often depicted Frideswide in the act of founding her convent beside the spring, surrounded by angels, visual homilies reinforcing her sanctity. The dissolution of the monasteries under Henry VIII in the 1530 threatened to extinguish her veneration. Although many religious houses were suppressed, Frideswide's priory was refounded as a collegiate church, Christ Church, in 1546, largely because of her enduring local importance, and the civic pride her cult inspired. Her shrine was dismantled, but fragments of her relics were discreetly preserved by sympathetic canons. When the church became the cathedral of the newly created Diocese of Oxford, her memory found new life. The cathedral chapter maintained an annual observance of her feast, and successive deans commissioned sermons and devotional tracts recounting her virtues. In the early modern and Georgian eras, scholarly interest in England's Anglo Saxon heritage revived recognition of Frideswide's pioneering role. Antiquarians such as John Leland and Anthony Wood recorded local traditions, transcribing oral legends and examining old manuscripts. Their writings ensured that even as the visible traces of her medieval cult faded, her story endured in print and memory. The 19th century Oxford movement within the Church of England further rekindled appreciation for medieval saints. Architects and churchmen restored parts of Christ Church Cathedral in Gothic Revival style, recreating, where possible, the setting for Frideswide's relics. Today, St. Frideswide's presence is woven into the fabric of both the city and university. The cathedral's Frideswide lantern, a stone spire added during Victorian restoration, serves as a beacon visible across Oxford's skyline, an architectural homage to her illuminating example. Scholarships and academic prizes bearing her name support students in theology and medieval studies, while the annual Frideswide Festival combines processions, choral evensong, and community events around October 19, her traditional feast day. Modern pilgrimages also persist. Small groups still visit the cathedral's Thring, now enclosed within the North Ambulatory, to offer prayers of thanksgiving. Local schools and civic societies include Frideswide in their history programs, ensuring successive generations learn of the woman whose faith and leadership gave birth to one of the world's great centers of learning. In public art, stained glass windows portray her holding a model of the Priory, sometimes accompanied by the boat she reputedly used to cross the marshes, symbolizing her journey of faith.
Saint Frideswide's life and legacy form the bedrock upon which both the sacred and scholarly identity of Oxford were built. From her humble beginnings as an Anglo-Saxon noblewoman seeking a life of prayer and service, she laid the foundations of a religious community that would evolve into Christ Church and, ultimately, one of the most celebrated universities in the world. Her unwavering faith, evidenced in the miracles of her holy spring and the tales of divine protection, cemented her status as a patroness whose intercession drew medieval pilgrims and royal patrons alike. Despite the upheavals of the Reformation and the dissolution of the monasteries, Frideswide's memory endured through acts of civic devotion, antiquarian scholarship, and ecclesiastical continuity. The transformation of her priory into a collegiate church and then a cathedral preserved the spiritual heart of her foundation, while Victorian restorations and modern celebrations reaffirmed her place in Oxford's cultural consciousness. Today, the Frideswide lantern shines across the city's skyline as a perpetual reminder of her guiding light. Her feast day, enduring pilgrimages to her spring, and academic prizes in her name testify to the dynamic way her story continues to animate religious devotion and academic aspiration. Saint Frideswide's legacy transcends centuries. She was at once a woman of contemplative devotion, a pioneering community leader, and an emblem of resilience. By intertwining hospitality, scholarship, and spirituality, she created a heritage that beckons students, clergy, and visitors to reflect on the enduring power of individual conviction to shape collective destiny. In Oxford's spires, its cathedra, and its libraries, the spirit of Saint Frideswide remains alive, inviting all who follow her path to pursue knowledge with faith, wisdom with humility, and community with compassion.
Within the soaring vaults of Christ Church Cathedral in Oxford lies the modest yet profoundly resonant Shrine of Saint Frideswide, a tangible link to the city's earliest Christian foundation and its enduring legacy. While much of the original Anglo Saxon Priory church has vanished, the shrine occupies a quiet nook in the cathedral's north ambulatory, occupying the site where Frideswide's relics were once enshrined and venerated by medieval pilgrims. Saint Frideswide, an 18th century Mercian princess turned abbess, founded her convent beside a healing spring just beyond the nascent town of Oxford. After her death around AD 727, her followers interred her body in the Priory church she had established. Over subsequent centuries, miracles of healing and divine intervention were attributed to her intercession, prompting the construction of an elaborate shrine in the 12th and 13th centuries. When Cardinal Wolsey refounded the Priory as Christ Church in 1546, her shrine survived the dissolution of the monasteries, an exceptional testament to her local importance, though most of its decorative stonework was dismantled, and her relics dispersed. Today's visible shrine dates largely from the Victorian restoration carried out by G Street in the mid-19th century. Situated beneath a small lancet window that bathes the space in soft northern light, the shrine comprises a richly carved alabaster and carn stone facade set into the cathedral wall. Delicate foliage motifs, diapered panels, and slender shafts evoke the spirit of Gothic craftsmanship, while an inscribed dedicatory panel proclaims Frideswide's patronage of Oxford. Behind a wrought iron grille, a recessed niche shelters a simple stone sarcophagus reputed to contain fragments of her original burial stone. Though no longer the focus of mass pilgrimages, the shrine remains an active locus of devotion. On October 19th, her feast day, the cathedral chapter celebrates with choral evensong before the shrine, and clergy and visitors alike leave tokens of prayer, flowers, handwritten petitions, or simple sprigs of boxwood, upon the stone ledge. A nearby votive kiosk offers laminated prayer cards recounting her life and encouraging personal reflection. In daily use, the shrine's gentle illumination and secluded location invite quiet meditation, drawing worshippers away from the cathedral's grander spaces into an intimate encounter with Oxford's founding saint. The Shrine of Saint Frideswide exemplifies the layering of history within Christ Church Cathedral. Beneath its decorative Victorian veneer lie echoes of medieval stonework and, before that, the simple wooden coffin that once held Frideswide's remains. The shrine's survival through Reformation upheaval and architectural reformations speaks to her deep-rooted significance for Oxford's civic and academic communities.